The front door was unlocked. That's what I remember first. Not the laughter. Not the whispering. Not the sound of my sister saying my husband's name. Just the door. I pushed it open quietly, walked down the hallway, and froze, because the two people I trusted most in this world were standing in my kitchen, like I didn't exist, and in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It woke up. They say betrayal hurts most when it comes from family. I never believed that fully, until the day I came home early and found my husband with my own sister. In 1 second, my marriage collapsed. In 1 second, my childhood memories shattered. But what they didn't know, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to win. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood there long enough for them to notice me. My husband turned pale. My sister grabbed her shirt like she was the victim, and suddenly, they both started talking at once. It's not what it looks like. We didn't mean for you to find out this way. It just happened. Just happened. Affairs don't just happen. They are choices, repeated choices. Text by text, lie by lie, glance by glance. They happen in secret conversations, in deleted messages, in moments where loyalty is tested and fails. And this wasn't just infidelity. This was betrayal layered in history, holidays, birthdays, shared secrets, family dinners. This was my sister helping me pick out my wedding dress. This was my husband promising my father he would protect me. This was Sunday mornings, laughing over coffee. This was trust built over years, collapsing in seconds. She wasn't just another woman. She was my sister. The same sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The same sister who held my hand on the first day of school. The same sister who cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. I defended her. I protected her. I loved her. And she stood there in my kitchen wearing my trust like it was disposable. My husband kept talking, his voice shaky now, trying to control the narrative. We were going to tell you. Tell me what? That my marriage had become a joke. That family dinners would now include stolen glances across the table. That every memory I cherished had a hin stain on it. My sister's eyes filled with tears, but I noticed something important. They weren't tears of regret. They were tears of fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of exposure. Not guilt. And in that moment something shifted inside me. I realized I was the only honest person in that room. I could have screamed. I could have thrown things. I could have collapsed into heartbreak right there on the kitchen floor. But I didn't, because the second you lose control, you give your power away. Instead, I let the silence stretch. I let them feel it. I let them sit in the discomfort of being seen. Truly seen. There's something terrifying about being exposed without a shield, and my calm became their mirror. They expected drama. They expected tears. They expected a scene they could later describe as her overreacting. I gave them composure. I gave them a steady gaze. I gave them a smile, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I understood something they didn't yet realize. The person who stays calm in chaos is the person who wins. My smile wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't weakness. It was the moment I stopped being the betrayed wife and started becoming the woman who would decide what happens next. And that scared them more than any scream ever could, because they suddenly understood they had underestimated me. That night, I packed a small bag, not because I was running away, because I was preparing. You see, anger makes you loud, but strategy makes you powerful. While they were busy rewriting the story of my marriage behind my back, I was quietly rewriting the ending. I didn't slam doors. I didn't call my mother. I didn't post cryptic quotes online. I moved in silence. And silence, I learned, is terrifying to people who expect chaos. Over the next few days, I became someone even I didn't recognize. Calm, focused, calculated. I collected every financial document I could find. Tax returns, mortgage papers, bank statements, investment reports. I opened drawers I hadn't touched in years. I logged into accounts he assumed I never checked. Every password he thought I'd forgotten, I reset. Every shared account, I reviewed line by line. And what I found made something very clear. He wasn't as smart as he thought he was. I screenshotted messages, not just the romantic ones, but the careless ones. The ones where they discussed waiting a little longer before telling me. The ones where my sister joked about redecorating her new house. The arrogance in their words was almost impressive. They truly believed I would be the last to know. and the weakest to respond. But betrayal has a strange way of sharpening your mind. I spoke to a lawyer quietly. I didn't tell friends. I didn't hint at revenge. I simply asked questions. Calm, precise questions. What happens in cases of infidelity? How are assets divided? What counts as financial misconduct? What rights do I have if the property was purchased before certain transfers? The answers were better than therapy. Then I checked the property ownership documents. The house, our house, the one he proudly introduced as our dream home, was in my name, only mine. I had insisted on that years ago because my credit was stronger. He had laughed at the time and said, "What's mine is yours anyway." Funny how those words age. I reviewed our joint accounts. Most of the savings had been accumulated through my bonuses, my side investments, my careful budgeting. He had contributed, yes, but nowhere near what he implied in front of others. The lifestyle he flaunted was built quietly on my discipline. And the business he bragged about building from the ground up, the one he said would take care of us forever, registered under my credit, my financial backing, my risk. He had signed papers. I had secured foundations. The more I uncovered, the calmer I became. Not because I enjoyed what was happening, but because I realized something powerful. I was not powerless. They thought they were stealing my marriage. They imagined secret meetings and whispered promises meant they were building a new life. But what they were really doing was stepping into a storm they didn't see forming. Because, while they were focused on passion and fantasy, I was focused on legality and reality. They believed I would collapse under heartbreak. Instead, I built a case. And by the time they realized I wasn't crying anymore, it was already too late. They had no idea they weren't just losing me. They were losing everything. 2 weeks later, I invited them both to dinner. Yes, both of them. They walked in holding hands, bold, confident, almost relieved, like the worst part was over, like I had already played my role as the devastated wife and quietly stepped aside. My sister had the nerve to smile at me when she walked in. Not an apologetic smile, not a guilty one. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they think they've won. My husband avoided eye contact at first, then straightened his shoulder, as if he had convinced himself this new life was justified. I welcomed them in calmly. I even complimented my sister's dress, the same dress I had once told her looked stunning on her. We sat down at the dining table I had chosen, in the house I had paid for. Under the chandelier I bought with my year-end bonus. I served dinner. I poured drinks. I asked about their new place. They relaxed as the minutes passed. That was the interesting part about guilt. It fades when there are no consequences. Halfway through dinner, as my sister laughed at something painfully unfunny, I stood up and walked to the kitchen. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed steady. I picked up the 2 envelopes I had prepared days ago and returned to the table, without drama. Without raised voices, I slid them across the table. "One for each of you," I said softly. My husband frowned and opened his first. The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost fascinating to watch. His lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes scanned the pages again and again as if they might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Divorce papers, detailed, precise, irreversible. Then he reached the final section. The financial misconduct clause, the evidence of transferred funds, the documented misuse of shared accounts, the timeline that matched perfectly with hotel receipts and private transactions. He looked up at me, and for the first time that night I saw fear. My sister, still confused, tore open her envelope. At first, she didn't understand what she was reading. Then her fingers tightened around the paper. Notice of eviction, effective immediately. Her new home was legally mine. Always had been. The property was purchased before our marriage and protected under a prenuptial agreement he clearly never expected me to enforce. "You can't do this," she whispered. I tilted my head slightly. "Actually, I can." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument could have been. No shouting, no insults, just the sound of their confidence collapsing. "You planned this," my husband muttered. "No," I replied calmly. "You did, because every lie they told, every secret meeting, every stolen moment, those were the bricks. I simply built the wall." My sister's eyes filled with tears, not for me, not for what they had done, but for herself. For the inconvenience, for the sudden instability. for the reality that their fantasy came with consequences, and that's when I said the words that had been sitting in my chest for 2 weeks waiting for the right moment. "You didn't destroy me," I said, meeting both of their eyes. "You revealed yourselves not just as cheaters, but as people willing to trade loyalty for excitement, trust for ego, family for selfish desire. They thought they had taken everything from me, but all they really did was remove themselves from my life, and that was the greatest favor they could have given me. People expected me to fall apart. They waited for the tears, the late-night breakdowns, the desperate phone calls asking why. Some even watched me closely, as if Betrayal was a show and I was the main character meant to perform grief on command. But here's the truth no one saw coming. Losing them was not my destruction. It was my freedom. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it walks in quietly after the storm has ripped your roof off. Within months, my life looked completely different. I finalized the divorce with steady hands, not shaking ones. Every signature felt less like an ending and more like reclaiming a piece of myself. The courtroom wasn't a battlefield. It was a doorway. I secured my assets and untangled the financial knots that once tied me to someone who didn't value me. There was something deeply empowering about understanding every document, every account, every detail. Knowledge replaced fear. Control replaced chaos. For the first time in years, my future wasn't dependent on someone else's loyalty. Cutting off toxic family ties was harder. Blood is supposed to mean something. History is supposed to protect you. But I learned that shared DNA does not guarantee shared values. Protecting my peace meant setting boundaries I once thought were impossible. It meant choosing myself even when others called it selfish. And in that choice, I found strength I didn't know I had. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I deserved to heal properly. I wanted to understand why betrayal hurt so deeply and how to make sure it didn't define me. Session by session, I unpacked the pain. I learned that grief and growth can exist in the same space. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes it simply means releasing the weight so you can move forward without dragging the past behind you. Slowly, I rebuilt my confidence. Not the surface-level confidence that comes from compliments or appearances, but the quiet kind. The kind that shows up in how you walk into a room. The kind that lets you sleep peacefully at night. The kind that whispers you survived. And something surprising happened along the way. I stopped feeling anger. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, like a wound closing. I realized that holding on to rage only kept me tied to them. Letting go wasn't about excusing what they did. It was about refusing to let their choices occupy my mind any longer, because betrayal doesn't define your worth. It exposes theirs. Their lack of integrity, their lack of loyalty, their inability to honor what they had. I began to see clearly their actions were a reflection of their character, not my value. They lost a loyal wife. They lost a trusting sister. They lost stability and someone who would have stood beside them through anything. I lost illusions. I lost the false image of who I thought they were. I lost the version of my life built on assumptions. And that was a gift, because once the illusion is gone, you're left with truth. And truth, no matter how painful, is always the beginning of real freedom. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed, listen carefully. Do not let someone else's disloyalty convince you that you are unworthy. The strongest revenge isn't chaos, it's composure, it's rebuilding. It's walking away with your dignity intact. Sometimes the worst day of your life is the day your real life begins. And trust me, when I came home early that day, I thought everything ended. But in reality, everything finally started.